Welcome to the Recommended Daily Value Podcast, your daily dose into the health and wellness world.
Welcome back to the Recommended Daily Value Podcast, where we dive into everything health, fitness, and nutrition related 5 days a week in 5 minutes or less. This podcast is brought to you by Umzu, and I'm your host, Tyler Woodward. Today, we've got round 2 of boosting your testosterone levels, and we're diving into nutrition, so make sure to hit that subscribe button. Nutrition is a pretty controversial topic these days, but I think at this point we have a pretty solid understanding of how nutrition affects your testosterone production. First off, let's start with what not to eat for high T. The number one thing on my list to avoid for high testosterone levels are, drumroll, please, vegetable oils. It's pretty well established in the literature that you don't want to be eating lots of the so-called heart-healthy polyunsaturated fats for optimal testosterone production. The polyunsaturated fats are highly susceptible to oxidative stress via lipid peroxidation, as are the testes. Too much oxidative stress in the testes will not be able to do their job in producing ample amounts of testosterone, and a decent amount of the research has found that the consumption of the omega-6 and even omega-3 PUFAs result in lower testosterone production in the testes and can even damage the testes. In contrast, saturated fats and even monounsaturated fats much more stable, so they're much less likely to be subject to oxidative stress through lipid peroxidation. Additionally, all types of fats can be converted into cholesterol in the body. Cholesterol is a precursor molecule used to make all the steroid hormones, including testosterone. But when polyunsaturated fats are used to synthesize cholesterol, the cholesterol molecules are believed to be smaller and less buoyant. These smaller, less buoyant cholesterol molecules are believed to be more likely to contribute to heart disease or atherosclerosis. This may also indicate that the smaller cholesterol molecules are utilized less efficiently in the process of steroidogenesis or steroid synthesis. Regardless, moral of the story is to prioritize saturated fats like coconut oil, tallow, ghee, butter, etc. Next up, we've got the phytoestrogens. Phytoestrogens are compounds that are naturally found in foods that exert estrogenic effects in the body, meaning they act like estrogens. Estrogen is more or less an antagonist to testosterone in the body. They pretty much have opposite functions, and the more estrogen present, the more likely testosterone is going to be converted into estrogen through a process known as aromatization. Some of the most potent phytoestrogens are found in soy, flax, hops, aka beer, licorice, and I'd add in mint and oats to a lesser degree, which are all foods I personally aim to avoid as much as possible, both for general health and testosterone production. Some may argue that it's been debunked that consuming the phytoestrogens will significantly elevate estrogen levels in the body, but I disagree. Most of these studies rely on testing for estrogen levels only in the blood, but this doesn't necessarily show the estrogen levels inside the cell where estrogen is really exerting its effects. So I don't think we can necessarily dismiss the estrogenic effects of these compounds in these foods. Again, blood levels may not accurately reflect the actual effect estrogen is having on our body and our cells. We also know that a lot of the synthetic estrogens like BPA are known to have very deleterious effects. But on to foods that support testosterone production. Generally, the foods that support T production will contain micronutrients that are involved in steroidogenesis, aka the synthesis of hormones like steroid hormones like testosterone. If macronutrients are like the building blocks or materials that make us up, micronutrients are like the glue, the little things that hold everything together. Micronutrients most often serve as cofactors in enzymatic reactions, kind of like your passenger serving it as your navigator in your long road trip. Without these essential micronutrients, you won't be able to get to your destination or where you need to go, or in the case of the body, yield as much of your desired end product, like testosterone. Probably the most important micronutrient for testosterone production is its cofactor, zinc. Without adequate zinc, testosterone production will tank. My favorite foods for zinc are red meat and shellfish. There's also some zinc in dairy products and eggs, although it might be difficult to meet your recommended daily value of zinc from those. See what I did there? I recommend consuming red meat 2 to 3 times per week and shellfish like shrimp or oysters once a week. It's also advisable to avoid eating these foods with any grains, nuts, or seeds, as they all contain compounds within them that can inhibit zinc absorption. Coming in right after zinc is my favorite mineral, magnesium. Magnesium is another compound that we know being deficient in will severely hamper testosterone production. Magnesium is involved in around 3,000 enzymatic reactions, and it's also bound to ATP in the cell, meaning it's intimately tied to cellular energy production in the cell, which is inherently tied to testosterone production. Magnesium is found in high quantities in foods like cacao, coffee, and in trace amounts in a lot of other foods like meat. Magnesium is hard to come by in enough quantities, so it's one of the things I generally recommend supplementing with. A few more honorable mentions are retinol or animal vitamin A, copper, iron, and boron. All of these except boron can be found in high quantities in organ meats like beef liver, which I'm a huge advocate for consuming once every other week or so. Retinol is also found in milk, cheese, butter, and eggs in relatively high quantities. Copper can be found in both shellfish and cacao, so don't shy away from chocolate. Boron is a bit more hard to come by, but it can be found in relatively decent quantities in avocados and raisins, but probably also grapes in smaller amounts. Lastly, we've got a couple other general foods I think are worth mentioning. As I discussed before, you want to prioritize the saturated fats, but arguably the best fats for testosterone production are likely ghee and butter. Not only are these fats highly saturated, they also contain cholesterol, the main precursor to testosterone, and vitamin K2 and retinol, both of which may aid in testosterone synthesis. I think olive oil can also be considered a close second, but I don't recommend using it for high heat cooking. This is mostly for the very unique protective compounds found in olive oil. Garlic, onions, and certain herbs like parsley and thyme also seem to have some beneficial effects. And we cannot forget about good old sugar. Sugar is an essential component in supporting thyroid health and activity. High thyroid function is necessary to support high testosterone levels, as it's one of the active ingredients in steroid hormone synthesis. Thyroid hormone is also an antagonist to cortisol, and cortisol is also an antagonist to testosterone, meaning the higher cortisol levels, the lower your testosterone will be in general. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, so to speak. Sugar lowers cortisol levels because cortisol's main job is to increase blood sugar levels by breaking down your muscle and fat to do so. So make sure to slam some fruit and some high quality sugars. Last but certainly not least, make sure to get an adequate protein to support both muscle and testosterone production. A minimum of 0.6 grams per pound of body weight is what I would recommend. Well, that's it for this episode, so make sure to tune in tomorrow to learn about toxins you should be avoiding in your day-to-day life to optimize testosterone production. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit that subscribe button and to share it with a friend. Remember, these opinions are my own, based on my own research and experiences, and it is not medical advice. Till next time, be good.